Hello and welcome to the Dailies on Equal Television International, where we keep you updated with all that's happening from the Nigerian newspaper. I am Sele Elisha Dasham, and I'll be doing this together with Rachel Tansey. Good morning.
Morning, sir.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
Fine, thank you. Quite a lot to look into the papers. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube. You can do well to drop your comment, drop your contribution of any of the story that is of interest to you this morning. And I'll be starting with the first paper, which is the Vanguard newspaper. The big story for the Vanguard we have on the Niger coup. Sanusi meet with Junta leaders, brief Tinubu. With the writer for the industry that say don't adopt military means to forge illegal government out of power, coming from the Southern and the Middle Belt Leaders Forum. Also, we have NGE call for strategic engagement and diplomacy. Says military intervention and abbreviation urges Tinubu and governors to fulfill promises on economic interventions. And we have NSCIA advises ECOWAS against sanction on Niger, urges dialogue. Niger ex-rebel launches anti-coup movement in the first sign of internal resistance. You can find detail of that on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Still on the Vanguard other stories, here we have OPS raises alarm over surge in capital flight, businesses closure. Also, we have Emifele asks court to stop federal government from further persecuting him. You can find that story on page 8. Kanu CG gives magistrate court 6 months to dispose pending cases. You can find that on page 13. And on 2023, all eyes now on the judiciary. Owerri Catholic bishops are saying. You can find that on page 11. And on Constitution Review, we have Senate assures promoters of Tega Gari States in Kanu. You can find that on page 8. And then we have FRS more suited to collect revenues for government coming from the Presidential Committee. Today has been set aside as pay as you earn according from the calendar of the FRS. So you can do well for those who know what they are supposed to do. You pay your taxes today. Still on Vanguard newspaper, resident doctors suspend nationwide protests. They were supposed to start that yesterday, but it has been suspended. But they are still on strike. So you can do well to read more on page 9. Edo Exco condemns Shaibu over impeachment saga. You can find that on page 12. And we also have on illegal checkpoint, IGP's squad arrests police and immigration officers in relation to illegal checkpoints. You can find that on page 6. Bandits kill 3 in Taraba. You can find that story also on page 6. And we have a column on sports. You can do well to read, and another coming from Olufasan. You can find other of the smaller columns and more stories inside the paper. And that's all on the Vanguard newspaper.
On Daily Independent, Niger coup NGE calls for strategic engagement and diplomacy. Breastfeeding lower risks of breast and ovarian cancer. This is a report coming from NAFDAC. The big story on the paper, further Naira devaluation, seeing non-exchanges fall 917 Naira per dollar. Federal government may be forced to review FX liberalization policy. A statement coming from an analyst. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 4. Nigeria loses 3.46 trillion Naira to poor infrastructure, others at port. Reps threaten to invoke powers against IPPIS AMCON and Budget Office. Emefle asks court to stop DSS from further persecuting him. And on subsidy removal, Ekiti okay's 5,000 Naira monthly to 10,000 Naira to 10,000 poor households food distribution, and we are looking forward to seeing other states taking drastic measures too. You can find the details on page 6. Supreme Islamic Council opposes sanctions military action in Niger. We have the writer under the story, Southern Middle Belt leaders ask Tinubu to address crisis peacefully. Sanusi meets Niger Republic's military junta in Niamey. And then we have former CBN governor, Muslim clerics meet Tinubu. We have promised to intervene to embattle Niger Republic. You can find more details on page 6. At the downside of the paper, we have Atlantic Ocean surge jeopardizes Bayelsa communities, Diri laments. The details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
On day, we also have on Daily Sun newspaper, babies not breastfed for 14 times more likely to die before their first birthday. This is a report coming from UNICEF, because the 1st to the 7th of August was being marked as an international, day looking at the issue of International Week for breastfeeding, exclusive breastfeeding. So here, UNICEF is saying that not breastfeeding babies 14 times more likely to die before. Babies not being breastfed are likely to die before then. We have a writer that followed that story saying Bauchi Assembly proposes law to extend maternity leave to 6 months. Well, we hope to see other states also taking measures so they can actually breastfeed their babies exclusively. The big story here is on coup in Niger Republic. Cardinals, bishop, editors warn against military action. Libya is example of disastrous consequences of military action coming from cleric. Military intervention will deepen Nigeria's economic crisis, and a DECO-US warns. Also, strategic engagement diplomacy should be applied, coming from the NGE. You can find all of the story on page 6 and 27. Atlantic Ocean surge endangers Bayelsa communities, coming from Dire. Lament submerging of about 250 buildings in Idoma in 10 years, solicit federal government support. 7 women regained freedom in Niger State after 130 days in captivity. You can find out on page 4. Federal government Emifere resumed battle over bail today. You can do well to find more of that story on page 4. And we also have diaspora engagement must for robust distribution of nation building, coming from Okonjo Iweala. You can find that on page 27. Federal government make FRS sole revenue collection agency with the rider to abolish taxes hampering businesses. Downside of the paper, Tinubu holds meeting with Wike Erufai in Aso Rock. We hope to hear more detail of what they discuss. So if you want to know a little, do well to read more of that on page 27. Here we have the picture story showing the former emir of Kano State, Khalifa Mohammed Sanusi, with the leader of the Niger Republic military junta, and when the former, emir visited the country. And that's all in Daily Sun newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, GlaxoSmithKline clients exit, review impact of economic reforms on rail sectors. We have NACCIMA urges federal government. Government policies choice responsible for divestment and capital flight. Statement coming from NECA. You can find the details on page 7. Nomination open for 2023 Obafemi Awolowo Leadership Prize. The details can be found on page 5. The big story on Nigerian Tribune as ECOWAS leaders meet today over Niger. Southern Middle Belt leaders, Catholic bishop, Islamic clerics, NGE warns against military action. Sanusi meets coup leader, visits Aso Villa after Nime return. You can find the details on page 3. Akpabio under fire over remarks on token given to lawmakers for vacation. Security of students, schools will get special attention, coming from Ribadu. You can find the details on page 8. Still on the paper, Presidential Committee on Tax Policy says Customs 62 MD8 may stop revenue collection. FIRS more suited for role. Tinubu meet Erufai and Wike. Details of the meeting can be found on page 23. And at the downside of the paper, 2 killed as truck rams 5 vehicles on Echo Bridge. The details of that story can be found on page 28, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Right, Rachel, let's talk a little about the Senate President under fire over remark on token given to lawmakers for vacation. It's no longer news that the House have been busy screening some of the nominees of the ministerial list that was given to them, and they have actually finished screening the 45, and then the 3 they're still pending when they have security report on the 3 on based on 1 or 2 things that they need to clarify before then. And then just after the hearing yesterday, the Senate President said that the cleric will actually send them a token for relaxation for their holiday, to make their holiday great, possibly. And then when he was being alerted that it was live, he said it will you will be sent emails, or like say prayers to your emails through that. And of course the Senate president will come under fire, because here are Nigerians lamenting, asking for a better cost of living, asking for the government to cost down their cost of governance. And here we are having the Senate president promising the senators a token for that, regardless of how much that token is. I think it would really, really not be fair on Nigerians that have been hoping for something coming up from these senators, hoping that something will come from the federal government. A bill will be passed that with an immediate effect, they will get whatever it is that the government is hoping to send to Nigerians to actually cushion the effect of the hardship on them. Yesterday we saw when Okonjo-Iweala told us that the president is aware of the hardship and they are working towards some measures, looking at how they can improve the welfare of women and youths, small and medium enterprises, giving them what they need to do, even though she said that her visit was not based or sent from the World Trade Organization, but she just felt it was important that she relayed, and then she met with the president, and then they are coming up with things that they can do. And here we are having our senators having something to actually sit with and then relax. And just like I said, it's really, really very, it's biased. It's really not right at a time like this. So even if it's not really right, or even if the Senate president will later debunk whatever happened, or maybe it was a slip of the tongue, but there are certain things we should be careful, because these are touching times. These are times when a lot of Nigerians are vulnerable and anything can trigger them. So we hope to hear definitely what the Senate president will have to say for himself, why he made that statement in public. And maybe he didn't know that the hearing was live on TV, and then a lot of media stations took that up. So we hope to hear what he'll say about that. But I hope that something will be done to rectify issues like this that come up.
This is not even fire in the first place, because whether he mentions it or not, it's going to happen. It's just fortunate that Nigerians got to hear that, you know what, amidst this hardship and everything that is going on, we have our lawmakers not feeling it whatsoever, because it's either they are getting 110 billion for cars being approved, or 70 billion for hardship allowances, and now we are seeing that they are going to get tokens for vacation. Now the thing is that it's not fire because it's going to die off like that. There's nothing that can be done about it. Just as he said, it just happens. It's fortunate for us, and at the same time unfortunate that we got to hear that, you know what, these people keep getting money even when Nigerians are yet to see 8,000 naira as palliative. Now it just keeps showing us that, you know what, we are still yet to have selfless leaders. And there's the proof out there. I don't think we need to wait for them to make such careless statement before we know that these people are not doing something yet about the hardship in Nigeria. Because for lawmakers to make joke about the plea of the masses in their session, it shows you the caliber of people we have deciding for us and making decisions. If we are yet to see something as little as 8,000 naira being given to households in Nigeria, if we are yet to see the grains, the metric tons of grains that the president have promised to give to poor people to help with feeding, if we are yet to see everything that is supposed to be put in place to help Nigerians cope with the fuel subsidy removal, then we already have that sign there that, you know what, these people are yet to do something, and they will take their time because they can't feel our pains. And that's why I keep saying it I keep saying it over and over, that the president cannot say, he's not even in the position to say, I feel your pain, or I know what you are going through, because you're not even in the position to feel it. What position you're in is to be able to listen and to act. And so far so good, nobody has acted. Our leaders haven't done anything yet to show us that they are willing to help Nigerians. So it calls us to call on them more and say, we are watching them and you need to do the needful. But as it is now, it's just we're at their mercy. So that's what they decide to do with us, because we voted them, we put them in power, we went to the poll, we did our election, and we said these are the people we want to represent them. Now it's left for them, hopefully with the fear of God in their heart, to do the needful for Nigerians and do the right thing, because we have Labour deciding to do a protest and going for a strike. For some reason the protest went on, however there's no strike, and these are the body that we are trusting to help us make the government listen to the common man and do the needful. We can see that the doctors have decided not to go on their protest. So the bodies that are in charge to making sure that the government listens to the masses, we are waiting to see the actions that they take. If not, we are just at the position of waiting to see what they do with the common man in Nigeria.
Well, as they take their vacation, I hope that they're ready to give Nigerians reasons for certain things. Just like you said, whether it was live or not, one thing is for sure is that they always have sitting allowance and certain allowances for certain things. But just in as much as we want them to be comfortable while they make laws, they shouldn't forget the people who elected them to that position. Because if you remember, a lot of Nigerians right now are smart, followers now know what they want. As a senator, if you're not representing them, we'll call you back home. And then let's get somebody that is willing to actually go there and pass a bill that will favor the people. So we just keep our fingers crossed on that. Let's take a look at the next paper, which is Nigerian News Direct, where we have collaborate with organized private sector to curb divestment, develop sustainable action plan, coming from NECA to federal government. Collaborate with organized private sector to help divestment, develop sustainable action plan. The big story: cost of governance, Nigerians full as Akpabio announces holiday allowances for senators. Lamed recklessness amid groaning. No issue if the payment is part of their entitlement, coming from stakeholders. Akpabio's statement taken out of context, work of mischief makers, coming from a group. Senate President names 50 APC senators, 18 PDP, 4 Labour Party, 2 SDP, 1 APGA as committee chairman. You can find more of that story on page 4. How notorious Ogun cultists resist arrest, beat police driver's finger. That's really a sad one. You can do well to read more on page 2. Exclusive breastfeeding reduce risks of breast cancer in women, coming from NAFDAC. You can read more, especially for our breastfeeding mothers, on page 2. Doctors suspend protests to review strike action. You can find that on page 3. Kogi 2023 ex-Kogi speaker, over 200 PDP chief ties defect to APC. You can find that on page 3. And we have from the acting AGP unveils operation procedure for schools protection squad. Acting IGP unveils operation procedure for schools protection squad. You can find detail of that story inside. We have a picture story here where we can see Abure together with Okonjo-Iweala at the Center for Study of Economic of Africa in Abuja recently. So you can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On leadership, on tribunal, Justice Odili denies working for Tinubu. Condemnation trails murder of Sheikh Kuri in Gombe State. You can find the details on page 7. And the big story on leadership: Niger crisis, Islamic Council, Catholic bishops warn against military invasion, asks Tinubu and ECOWAS to retrace steps. Emir Sanusi briefs president on discussion with junta leader. We have NGE calls for strategic engagement diplomacy. ECOWAS leaders meet over crisis today. Only 25% of Nigeria's primary healthcare centers functioning. This is an investigation and the result of issuing that only 25% of primary healthcare in Nigeria are functioning well. You can find the details on page 7. And on state creation, National Assembly will be fair to all, Bureau assures. Job racketeering reps give IPPIS boss other 24 hours deadline. Emefiele moves to stop persecution by DSS. And that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
A new Telegraph newspaper distribution in Nigeria as oil supply hit 2-year low. You can find that on page 8. And we have I'm eager to help you clean your past, Atiku tells Tinubu. And on the firearms suspended, CBN governor asks court to stop DSS from further prosecution. And on Safe School, IGP launches protection squad manual. You can find more of what that means on page 5 and 26. And the big story, fuel to cost more as ex-depot price hit 600 naira, was 480 naira and 495 naira as of July 18. And also we see that the NLG export to Europe disrupted by vandalism. You can find more detail on page 2 and 26. Japa syndrome seriously affecting Osun health sector, coming from the NMA. Women injured after hawking drops snake on her. That's really a sad one. Woman injured after a hawk drops snake on her. You can find on page 4 and 5. Expert warn as Niger airspace bill takes toll on airlines. You can find on page 4. Tinubu makes Wike Erufai at the Vida. APC chief tackles president over Chicago varsity credentials. You can find that on page 2 and 7. Army need 10 division to crush national security threat, coming from the retired general. Make case for command effectiveness, territory power delimitation. Adeleke calls for creation of regional security task force. You can find on page 3 and 28. Still on the issue of Niger crisis, reverse sanction, NSCIA urges ECOWAS. You can find the rider under. And we also have a study that says air pollution linked to rise in antibiotic resistance. So we have to check our environment and some of the things we release into the air so that when you take antibiotic, it can be effective. But looking at the issue of the Japa syndrome seriously affecting Osun health sector, coming from the National Medical Association. And then with just the last paper we took before I took this one, where we have about 25% of our primary healthcare centers functioning. And it is alarming because it's one of the reasons why we have our doctors going on strike, because there are a lot of things that need to be addressed that are yet to be addressed. I will remember before they went on the strike, they met with the Speaker, House of Reps, and seeing if they can come to terms so that they don't go on strike. But I think that meeting ended in deadlock, and then that was why they eventually went on strike. And some of the demands they made, if you actually go through it, Richard, it's really, really something that the government needs to sit and consider. One of which they said is that they need additional hands. You will remember the last time we saw the statistics says that about 10,000 patients to a doctor. But looking at the number of doctors that have left the shores of Nigeria abroad, you will agree with me that maybe when we take the statistics again, we will discover that maybe we're having about 20,000 patients, just maybe, to a doctor. And of course, we've seen over the years negligence coming from either our nurses, our midwives, or even the doctors themselves, because they get exhausted and they're tired, and then of course, they need additional hands to work up things. And we've seen that our primary health care, basically where, especially in the rural areas, is needed, because before you get to the general hospital, at least something should be done. When it gets beyond the primary health care, then you can now be taken to maybe one of the teaching hospitals or the general hospital. But we've seen that they're not even functioning. Richard, if you take a stroll to some of this primary health care, you will agree with me that you wonder, are you in a hospital or are you in a school? Because a lot of equipments are not even there. If you want to conduct a malaria test, sometimes they don't even have all of the small kits that are needed for malaria tests, typhoid tests, hepatitis, and the likes of them. So I really think that a lot needs to go into this. We are saying that possibly Osun is saying that because it is quite high over there. But I believe that a lot of states in Nigeria are also going through the same thing, the issue of the Japa syndrome of our medical practitioners. So I'm looking forward to seeing what steps the government are going to take. I hope that when the Senate are back from recess, they will come back and sit down and then deliberate what can we now do. because it was because of the meeting they had with the Senate. That was why they didn't go on that protest. So I'm hoping to see something positive coming out, because we keep saying this over and over, Rachel. The health sector is a sector that should not be taken lightly. It should be a sector that we should do all that is needed to make sure we keep that sector moving. So let's see what the government will come up with, and we hope that it will be something that the doctors will be happy with, so they can go back to work soon.
Of course, when you look at what is happening, it's just an effect of what should have been corrected 10 years ago. And if you happen to travel, even within your community, you can see that the primary health care is not up to standard. And every time we hear the word primary, we always make it look like it is not something that should be taken care of. But what people don't understand is that primary means basic, means in case of an eventuality, I should be able to be rushed to a primary health care center and then be stabilized before being moved to a major hospital. But then our primary healthcare don't even have these basic things to be able to do what is required of it. Just as you said, they don't have the basic tests, they don't have the drugs that are expected, and even the nurses are fewer than expected. And you can go to a primary health care and not get a doctor, and it shouldn't be like that. It's almost like the doctors are being rationed in the way that you might find one doctor in a primary health care or no doctors. There are times that when you come, you will get a doctor and you wouldn't get a doctor. Now, even if as a primary health care center can function with only nurses, and let's say, fine, let's have it that the doctors are not there as it should, in as much as it should be, then imagine what the general and bigger hospitals are going. And it's not a surprise that we are having fewer. Of course, it's not maybe, the ratio will definitely increase, because these statistics were as at last year, not this year, that we were looking at 10,000 patients to one doctors, and we have seen a wave and wave of Japa starting from January up till this point. And we can see that even in our immigration offices, passports are being delayed because they've run out of papers to make passport. We've seen cases where the immigration officers are being probed for collecting money at the site to be able to make passports for people who are in need of it. We are seeing this, and we know for sure that majority of the people living the shores of Nigeria are professionals, because they are the ones that their services are needed more abroad and all of that. So yes, we will continue to see things and that's why I asked the question, which is more deadly? Is it the fact that we don't even have the doctors, or is it the fact that there are the doctors and they are working with so much brain drain because it's all very deadly? Or is it the fact that there could be the doctors, there could be no brain drain, and we don't have the facilities to be able to detect what could save a life? We don't have ambulances that we can have treatment being given to accident victims before they even get to the hospital. So when you look at our health sector, it is lacking on so many levels, and you don't even know what problem should be fixed, because it's like every hole is leaking. So it shows that there's so much work to be done. But yes, this is something I keep saying, that we have the capacity, Sele, to make Nigeria better. However, if we'll be truthful to ourselves, people have been sleeping on their jobs, because it's not like we're living in an economy that doesn't make money, or there are no allocation made to these sectors. But I keep saying that growth is supposed to be slow and consistent, regardless of how much is being pumped into a sector. As long as there is somebody not sleeping on his job, doing the right thing, we should be seeing sustainability in the health sector, and we should be able to see some growth. But then it shows that people are sleeping on their job, have been sleeping, and we are going to see more of this in the country. And it is really sad that we are living in an economy that we just have to keep praying and trusting God for everything, because nothing is working. Because when you look at our health sector, you just know that when certain things happen to you, nobody can save you, only God. It's really sad. So I just hope that people wake up and do their jobs, Ellie.
What will happen, Rachel? Let's just give them, we have barely less than 5 months. We're in August, so we have just the next 4 ember months to see what will happen before the end of this year. Well, take a look at the next paper, which is the First News newspaper, Rachel.
On First News newspaper, and now eat dry rice, ousted Niger president laments hardship. The big story on the paper, Niger debacle worsens as ex-rebel leader moves against coups, launches anti-junta movement, vows to ensure Bazoum's reinstatement as ex-Kano Emir Sanusi meets junta leader in Niamey. And then we have a picture from left to right, the 14th Emir of Kano, Alhaji Muhammadu Sanusi, leader of Niger Republic military junta General Chani, and the Sultan of Damagaran after a meeting between Sanusi and the coup leader. We have academic records. Tinubu's pushback suspicious Atiku's U.S. lawyer. And we have still on Niger junta accuses France of attacking airspace and releasing terrorists. Apabio mistakenly exposes senators' holiday allowances. Still on First News newspaper, Okonjo Iweala denies saying she's under attack over visit to Tinubu. MDAs hide under advert waivers to sell jobs to highest bidders coming from the reps panel. Justice Mary Odili denies working for Tinubu to influence judgment. This is still on the ongoing tribunal. And on 2023 census, we are waiting for president's marching order. Statement coming from NPC. At the downside of the paper, federal government and Emefiele in fresh battle over bail in custody. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
We continue with other paper review. We'd love to take a break at this moment so we can open the phone lines and also read your comments as they drop. Please stay tuned with us. It's still the dailies on Echo Television International. We've been looking at quite a number of stories on the paper. The visit of the former emir of Kano State Sanusi to Niger. We've also been looking at many other, stories on the paper. So at this moment, our number is displayed on your screen. We'd love to hear what your thought is, what your contribution is. Doctors are still on strike, but they have actually suspended their protests, and also the Senate are under attack from Nigerians in regard to what the Senate president said about the holiday allowance. So we'd love to hear what your own take is. I still have Rachel Tenza with me in the studio. Thanks so much, Rachel. Welcome, all right, before the calls come in, let's take the voice of liberty. NLC passes no confidence vote in Bajabiamile committee, says it never called us to negotiate. You can find detail of that story inside the paper. And on Kaduna Tribunal, Governor Sani seeks extension of time as INEC closes case without witness. El-Rufai to turn down Tinubu ministerial position even after security clearance coming from sources. So keep your fingers crossed. Let's see what that will give birth to. And on peace effort, we have Khalafi of Tanzania, Sanusi meet Niger Republic coup leaders. You can see them during the meeting there, the picture story representing there.
Hello?
Emefiele moves to stop DSF from further persecution. Hello? And on improved health care.
Hello, Sele.
Take the score.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sele.
Morning, sir.
How are you?
Great, thank you.
Good morning, Sele and Rachel.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, Shama calling from Kaduna.
Okay, good morning.
Honestly, if I were El-Rufai, with the way I've been ridiculed, I will just forget about this issue of ministerial appointment. El-Rufai was the chairman of BPE. He made his ends there. El-Rufai was minister of FCT. He was a governor for 8 years. For God's sake, what did El-Rufai forget in the federal sector that he wants to be minister again? You can imagine the ridicule he has suffered. You can imagine the lamentation people are making on him. You can imagine what people are saying against him. because of his old country. El-Rufai doesn't have manners. It is as a result of his manners that he's been attacked left and right today, both in the Christendom and the Islamic aspect. Nobody respects El-Rufai in this country. So if I were El-Rufai, I would forget about this issue of ministerial appointment. But because he has no trust, he's not a man that doesn't respect himself, neither does he respect humanity. That's why he may accept this thing even after administrative thing. So I pray that Nigeria will get it right by bringing the men of focus that lead this country into what the decision expect to have. We need to have feeling of democracy. We need to have governance that will make the citizens feel that they belong. We are suffering since 2015. El-Rufai and Buhari made this country astray. El-Rufai made the nation astray. El-Rufai connected bogus law, and he just kept it on the side of his people and the southern part of the area. They only suffer insecurity. God will stand for us, with the southern Kaduna people, especially the Tia people. We were killed like animals, but today, by God's grace, God is taking charge of this country. Good morning, my sisters.
Good morning.
Right, thank you so much, sir, for that contribution. Richard would like to add something to what he said.
No, of course, he just made justice to the point he wanted to make concerning El-Rufai coming back as a minister, looking at all the key positions he has held in the past. I keep saying it, there are people that shouldn't even make it to the list in the first place. For some other reason, they made it. Let's watch and see what the lawmakers will do about it.
Of course, we keep our fingers crossed on that. We're still on the Voice of Liberty. We have ex-COAS Brutani secures court order to recover phone, vehicles and other property seized by the ICPC. And on media partnership, Liberty TV, Radio, FM collaborate with Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. You can find more detail of the story inside the paper, and that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On the Matrix newspaper, exit of multinational firms, LCCI worried tax federal government on ease of doing business. Banks offer telcos 120 billion naira debt repayment plan. Aradel Refinery PMS to hit market.
The last speaker spoke about the former governor of Kaduna State. I actually want to.
Hello. Good morning.
Yeah, I actually wanted to have spoken ahead of him, and that with El-Rufai at this time to sit down and see how other people govern the nation, govern their state. He should have become a state or a stakeholder, not ascribing for leadership position. He has made people miserable when he was a minister of Abuja Territory, and when he became the governor of Kaduna State. He's a fanatical man in a religious set, and as such, this kind of a person should just sit down now and see how others govern the nation, and that will help us better. And then on the other aspect of the former governor of Central Bank, Emefiele, he should just start patient and see how the law goes with him. He should not force the law to do that which he wants, but the law do that which he does not want. That is the law having its place of regarding to the issue confronting the nation that brought before the court. That is the charges against the Emefiele. So they shouldn't go ahead of the judge. Let the judges
All right, thank you so much.
move as they should. This is my submission.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Still on the Matrix newspaper, we have Aradel Refinery PMS to hit market August 2024 coming from the CEO. The big story on the paper, Niger crisis takes new twist as ex-rebel leader Bola moves against coups. Backs ECOWAS quest to restore constitutional order in Niger. Islamic Council urges Tinubu ECOWAS to embrace dialogue. Says economic sanctions counterproductive, eventually end in futility. After previous resistance, junta grants audience to Sanusi Lamido and Abdul Salam. You can find more details on page 2. And on the tribunal, Mary Odili denies working for Tinubu to influence judgment. And on mass kidnapping, security of schools will get special attention, says NSA. Tinubu meets Wiki and El-Rufai in Aso Rock. Banks' non-performing loans hit 1.32 trillion naira, blame economic challenges. Konjo Wela disowns letter alleging threats over visit to Tinubu. You can find more details on page 2, and that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
Alright, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. Reps order AGF to produce IPPIS officer queries APCON budget office. You can find more of that story on page 4. Dollar breaks 900 naira per dollar, ceiling heads to 950 naira per dollar at alternative markets. Custom enforces presidential directive on Nigerian-Niger border closure. NNPP chairman Taku Kwankwaso say party, not another Kwankwoshia group. You can find more on page 30. The big story, long road to peace as ECOWAS coup leaders maintain positions. You can find that story inside the paper on page 6. Why extension of UTME result validity impracticable by Oloyede. You can find that on page 3. Time to end bloodletting in the southeast. And also we have Oyedele say comprehensive review of tax law. You can find that story on page 18, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, federal government may stop custom NPA 61 agencies from collecting trillions in revenue. El-Rufai Wike meet Tinubu over ministerial confirmation. The big story on the paper, UN, AU, ECOWAS meet on next move. NSCIA warns the federal government. You can find the details of the story on page 2. At the downside of the Punch newspaper, federal government to spend 341 billion naira on judgment debt. 4 Metekun officers dismissed for indiscipline, coming from the Ondo commander. Cooking gas price will rise next week, says marketers. The details can be found inside the paper, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
I think this is where I'll tell everybody to go and refill their cylinders before the price get higher. But where is the money, Rachel, if I would say that?
Yeah.
Well, let us see that. Well, let's take a look at the next paper, which is This Day newspaper. Dangote hails Tinubu quest to ramp up tax collection, block revenue leakages. With the writer expresses confidence in Oyedele-led committee, harms on need to widen tax net digitalized system. Says Dangote Group pays more tax than the entire banking industry. Reveals Dangote Cement pay $300 million weekly as VAT. Federal government plans to make FRS sole revenue collection agency. You can find all of that on the front page and more on page 9. World Health Organization declares new COVID-19 strain variant of interest. So it's of interest. Everybody should read that. You can start on the front page and continue inside the paper. Diplomacy back on table as Sanusi meet Niger coup leader Tinubu. And Tinubu. We also have another writer following that say ECOWAS may consider 1-year military transition and election. Muslim clerics step in to help further diplomatic resolution. Nigerian politicians write president wants sanction lifted. Catholic bishop warned against repeating Libya's experience. And we have addressed cause of coup in West Africa. Falana tells leaders. So you want to know what is that all about? Do well to read from the paper. And we also have the picture story just by the side, still showing Sanusi when he met with the Niger coup leaders. And that's all on This Day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, the big story, Napoli G3 over Saudi offer for Osimhen, and I believe it wouldn't be a wise decision if Osimhen should take such an offer, no matter how good it might be. You can find more details on page 6. PSG slaps 150 million euros price tag on Neymar. NFF pays Super Falcons only 10 days camp allowance. Players arrive Nigeria. You can find the details on page 6. Mbappe rejects another PSG renewal offer. Juventus wants to sell Pogba for reduce his wage. Man United top Premier League wage bill ranking. Tuchel dreams of winning Champions League. Chelsea name Reece James as new captain. Congratulations to Reece James. You can find more details at the back page of the paper. Man City launches £70 million bid for Pusqueta, and you can see Bayern add Kepa to shortlist. Tyson Fury rules out any fight with Anthony Joshua, and we are hoping to see that there will be a fight maybe next year. Juve fans oppose Lukaku signing. Gens speak on resigning expensive or not true. You can find the details at the back page, and that's all the news on Sporting Sun.
Right on Business Day newspaper, starting with a big story, how Sanusi Niger visit reveals Nigerian soft power. You can start reading on the front page and continue on page 2. Opabio under fire over lawmakers' money for holiday. You can find that story on the front page and also more on page 30. Nigeria step-up bid to unlock 180 trillion naira debt asset with 70 government-owned businesses captured in asset register. As we've seen here, Nigeria is upping its game in a bid to unlock 100 trillion naira trapped in debt or idle government asset as a renewed hunt for cash heads up. So you can find this story on page 30 of Business Day newspaper. Lagos economy in go slow as traffic disappears. Well, of course, you need to find out why that is happening on page 2. Merging looms as airlines need fleets of 6 to fly. You can find more of that story on page 2, and I think that is how far we can go on the program. That's all on Business Day. Thanks so much, Rachel, for doing this with me. Thank you to our callers who called in on the program to actually contribute positively and also to see how we can make Nigeria a better country. Thank you to our crew members. Thank you to the producer, the general manager, and also to our supporters. You're very dear to us. Until we come your way again, bye for now.